Hi, everyone. Right on 10 o'clock, we'll give people another half a minute or so before we get cracking. I can see people are joining fast and thick, which is encouraging, especially for a Friday morning. Perfect. So with that, let's get started. So good morning to all of you. It's Friday, and what better way to welcome the weekend than a webinar on the Power Platform? So today we're focusing on what's coming the October Wave release for the Power Platform. So I'm Johannes Struck. I'm a business development manager here at Mhans, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation. I'm joined by my colleague James Willis, who's one of our CRM consultants. And before we get started, hi James. Just a couple of your usual housekeeping items for these sort of webinars. So webinar probably lasts about 45 minutes. We've got an hour, so we'll have some opportunities for question and answers for those that want to stay on the line afterwards. Of course, obviously the webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on demand. All participants are set to listen only and will remain so for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, there's a Q&A button. So just feel free to type your question. As I said, I'll do my best just to answer those on the fly. If not, we'll take those offline and get one of our consultants to tackle those for you. But yeah, feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar. So without further ado, let's get started. Over to you, James.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So for any of you who've had a sneak peek at the release wave 2, some of the more exciting features are coming to Power Apps, so Model Driven and Canvas, Power Automate, Dataverse, the governance and administration, and of course Copilot Studio. So we will be focusing on the updates for the UK. So anything that's been going out to the US at the moment that we won't see for a while, I've not necessarily covered. So as a start, we are getting a new streamlined header and navigation. So what Wave 2 is doing is they're modernizing the model-driven app look and feel. So the header and navigation are now simplified so that the most common actions are discoverable with fewer clicks. So this visual language spans apps, forms, and view pages. So there's a consistent model across the app. I think the idea here is that Microsoft are bringing this in line with their whole Microsoft 365 visual model. And on top of that, hopefully this should reduce some form of training time and lower the cognitive load for like the day-to-day tasks. I believe the name they've given this is the Fluent Design System. So they have got a React page where you can sample some of their new changes. But generally this can be toggled per app. So if you do have a lot of users who potentially are very used to I would call it the legacy style, but I still think it's called the new look as of current. So if as users get acquainted with the refresh look, you can expand the rollout app by app. By default, if you're creating apps from the plan designer, they will use this modern refreshed look, but it can be turned on and off at a whim within the settings of said model-driven app. If users are relying on classic muscle memory, I don't really think this is an overwhelming change in terms of item location, bar the command bar buttons, which are slightly tucked away. So I will give you a preview of this in a second, but if you do look up here, you can see we've obviously got what would be the data at the top right, followed by the command bar, as opposed to the command bar sitting at the very top below the header. So the enhancements here, I believe, are meant to minimize the visual clutter, essentially a consistent look and feel, as I've touched on earlier. Though there is a little limitation at present that this isn't replicated in the mobile app or the mail app. Now that we've got a simplified layout, I believe they're pushing for better spacing, icons that align with contemporary design principles, and providing greater brand coherence with the rest of the Microsoft 365 apps. You'll see on the left here, the sitemap as well has changed slightly. So it's not a major overhaul. You still see your sections and grouping and your tables, but they all fall more in line with Microsoft's designated color scheme. So While there's no support for dark mode as of yet, I believe there are plans to allow you to change the header color to align more with your brand, which I believe can be done by some environment setting changes in the Power Apps Maker portal. Let's take a little look at quick demo. So as you can see, as a little sample, this is what you may currently know as the new look. So this is classic, and of course it wants me to sign in. You give me, oh no, beautiful. We've retained, love that. So classic blue header, classic layout you may be used to, classic grid. However, this is the refreshed look. So as you can see, we've got this streamlined header. We've got the more streamlined icons here. So Copilot and Teams are both accessible. If we go into an account, for an example, you will see quite not an overwhelming change, but something that I think may take a little bit of getting used to, which will be the movement of the command bar. So at the top here, you can see we have our classic command bar buttons, so save, save and close. Tucked behind the ellipses here are the rest of our commands. If we, however, go into it in the new look, we have our AI summary at the top. We have a few data points here. And of course, here are our command bar buttons. You can see the icons have changed slightly. They're more reflective of this modern look and feel. But generally, your sections and your tabs are the same. Now, if we go into Power Apps, this is a nice, easy one to turn on and off. So if we go to the settings, this is just a model-driven app. If I navigate into settings, features, and we'll scroll down, we have header and navigation refresh. So I've got this switched to on. You can either have this as automatic or you can just fully turn the feature off. If we go back to the presentation. So next, anyone who joined us for our Power Platform Wave 1 webinar this year, this slide might seem familiar. Kudos to Tom. I've nabbed your slide because we have an upgrade to the same product and your screenshots were fine. So essentially, we now have the ability, or we've had the ability to generate a chart on the fly. So while that hasn't changed dramatically, we do have a nice new feature, which is the ability to copy the chart to the clipboard and share it as a graphic. So this whole area here is part of what's considered the data exploration agent. So from any model-driven apps view, you can summon Copilot and query your data. Copilot generate a chart and use summaries in context, removing the need to hop to separate reporting tools for quick checks. Now, some of you might be wondering here where it fits in versus Power BI. In short, in its current state, it's not going to be able to replace Power BI. This is for fast exploration and is there a pattern moments. When you need governed metrics, DAX and enterprise distribution, that will all still be Power BI. But this Copilot feature is more for triage, validating hypotheses and deciding what deserves a proper report. The enablement here is users by admins, makers or analysts. So treat this as a controllable enhancement that you can phase in as adoption grows. So let's go to our demo again. And we're going to use the new look. We're going to get you acquainted with this one way or another. Under accounts here, let's bring up our visualization. So as a start, we use the data agent here. I'm going to search for households or contact Graham, if I can spell, McPherson. You might be wondering why I've searched for the lead singer of Madness. That's because our house is a universally renowned as being easy to locate. I would love to tell you where on the street that's located, but I'm not sure if I infringe on protected use there, though our house is in the middle of my screen. Point being, if we open up, we can click visualize. Now, what does this do? So we've got, this is the generic charts. We can click here, visualize. This analyzes the data in the view. This looks for patterns. It's going to suggest something based on the data. So where we've got one record, not a lot to show. We're going to show accounts, by city, which here would be London. Now, if I searched for, as an example, accounts in London, we should get a much larger data set. Unfortunately, we don't, because I believe we've still got our little filter there. So much larger data set. Automatically, we're reworking, we're analyzing the data in the view, we're generating a chart. And here we are. So they've decided the first thing to check is accounts by owner. You can see here, you can still ping the system charts. You've got your personal chart that's been summarized by Copilot here. You can drill down. I believe we can change our legend, we can change our aggregation, and we can change the type of chart we're displaying. Now, what I'm interested in here is the fact we can copy it. So I'm just going to copy it like that. I am going to go to Teams. I've already got this prepped. So I do look like a bit of a strange person messaging myself in Teams, but with a Control-V paste. That exact chart, that graphic is now an image. And we can see the data we've returned. So this is a preview feature, so you can see here we've not quite got through our legend, but in an earlier one I've done, we can see the legends have come through and it's more reflective of the data I tried to capture at the time. So let's go back to the slideshow. Moving further on, we now have Copilot Smart Paste. So some of you may be a little bit acquainted with this anyway, because it's been in public preview since October 2024. This new Copilot feature, basically intake here is beginning with emails or notes. The point being is you can take a blob of unstructured text on your clipboard and paste it, and Copilot will map out the fields that it believes that data goes into. So Copilot's going to extract names, dates, references, drop them into the right fields, no manual retyping required. So while it can work with unstructured data, semi-structured is best. So, had you received an email from finance saying, right, we need to add a contact for Graham Tucker, he has this account credit limit, you could just copy that, paste it on the form, bang, your fields are all filled out. So, I mean, for a lot of people, this would be great for lead and case creation, supplier requests, field forms, basically anything coming in text format that you can copy, emails, team chats, documents. Because it uses natural language understanding, it can work with some quite interesting sets of data. So if I pop open CRM again, and let's open up a Word document. So here we have Chris Simmons, who lives at, this is all fictional, I'd just like to add as well, I'm not exposing anybody. Chris Simmons, who lives at 19 Pickador Court in Norfolk, has donated a tenner. We've confirmed the receipt via SMS on his fake phone number, and we'll follow up with an email to his fake email. He's also mentioned that while he's happy for us to know he works as a desk clerk at My Job PLC, he'd rather we didn't send him promotional material, and his wife Delia has consented to being contacted in his absence. Let's copy that. Let's go and create a new contact. In fact, I may have that ready to go. Perfect. So I can either click this fancy button here for Smart Post, or if I'm clicking outside of the remit of a field and I press Control-V, you can see Copilot's looking for suggestions from the data on my clipboard. Straight away, we've mapped that it's Chris Simmons. We've mapped there a desk clerk. There's his email, his mobile phone, his address, or at least what is picked up of the address from the Word document. This is done on a tab by tab basis. So this couldn't fill out all of your tabs at once, but I mean, for the amount of fields this is filled in, that is drastically quicker than me copying and pasting or typing that by hand. Let's go to the details for an example. We'll do the same thing. This time I'll click the button. We'll look for suggestions. And great, we've picked up that his spouse or partner is Delia. I'll be honest, I don't think there was much else it could have picked up for this, but possibly the marital status. So what do we do with this data? We can either commit all of it and say, right, that's fine, I'm happy with that, or per field, we can accept the suggestion or reject it. So Chris Simmons, absolutely fine. We're doing a little duplicate search as well, just to make sure that there's no other contacts with that name. But if I decided, you know what, I'm not happy with desk clerk, press no, I'll type in my own value. And then you can save the contact. That I think is quite a handy little feature to have. You know, there's less copy paste, it's more of a business paced ideology there. And I mean, in my opinion anyway, that's going to reduce the amount of, you know, keystrokes required, mistypes. It just streamlines your data entry. Now, just sparing off of this and just going back to the presentation, another part of this is Copilot assisted data entry. So this has been around for a while. So public preview February 2025, general availability, just like the Copilot Smart Paste, will be October 2025. This has been around again for quite a while, but this now can recognize a variety of different input sources. So where Smart Paste took my clipboard content, started filling out fields and mapped that accordingly, this can take it from a pre-provided document. Something like a Word document, you might think, great, that's fine. I understand why that works, but an image is another type of file you can use to pre-populate your data. So as far as I'm aware, images, Word documents, text files, CSVs, and a myriad of other file formats are accessible here. It's as simple as dragging and dropping onto the bar, the Copilot bar, which you can see there, or clicking the upload icon. Now, excuse me, my fault for using a trackpad. Brilliant. So let's go back to CRM. We have our contact. I'm just going to give that a quick refresh to clear out any suggestions. And I have a lovely image here. Now, this is just a screenshot I took from our CRM system, our demo system earlier. So contact A Allen here. This is purely an image. I believe it's PNG format. What I want to do, see if I can populate based on that. So it's going to scan the image. And for suggestions, fantastic. A Allen has been found, 18 Bridgewater Court, Longford Road, Manchester. So straight away, using some very clever Copilot AI, we've recognized text from the image and we've been able to map it to the right field. Now, by contrast, and I'd argue slightly less impressive, is the Word document we have that I've just copied from. We can use in the same way. Let me just close that document down. You know what, while I think about it, let's get rid of A Allen and we will try with our Word document. So again, it's going to look for suggestions. It's going to ratify through the text content we've got there. And straight away, we found Chris Simmons, his job, his position, his email, his full address. So we can accept those 8 suggestions. They've been committed. We're done. How quick was that? So both of these two features have the same enablement, which is per app. So if I just go to our little webinar app here, we obviously mentioned the header and navigation refresh earlier. We also have the Form Fill Assist toolbar, which is what we were referring to there. This has the 3 states of on, default, or off. So you can essentially have that on or off per app and roll it out to only the apps that need it. Back to our PowerPoint. Lovely. So our next point is desktop flow improvements. So this is quite an exciting change for those of you who spend a lot of time working in RPA. Users of both Power Automate Cloud and Power Automate Desktop will have noticed the Copilot integration in both is vastly different. So Power Automate Cloud has quite a nice Copilot integration. It can suggest improvements, it can actually make those improvements and do a number of other things with your input. You can, in some instances, essentially have Copilot build out your framework for your flow with minimal tweaks from your side required. Power Automate Desktop, by contrast, currently has an underwhelming light version of Copilot. It can give you a bit of guidance, but isn't contextually aware in regards to your flow, and instead can only really give you generic instructions. So you can see in my little screenshot there, I've clicked view prompts and I get to learn about. I don't get to work with my data. I don't get to work with my flow. I can learn about subjects. However, that's about to change. With this planned update to Power Automate Desktop, Copilot will translate your instructions, which can be written in plain English or entwined with Power Effects, and build that into a working desktop flow skeleton. So makers can focus on the business logic, while Copilot can handle the boilerplate. I mean, as a standard, this could be especially useful when automation know-how is scarce, but process knowledge is rich. RPA creation can often stall on syntax as well. So in Power Automate for Desktop, you can now describe the automation, i.e. open Excel, copy column A, paste into Apex, and Copilot drafts that flow for you. So without repeating what I've already said, Copilot generates the actions and wiring so makers can review and refine rather than build from a blank canvas. This therefore is reducing your lead time for first versions and encourages iterative design. This is due to come into public preview next month, but general availability is to be confirmed, which means that I can't physically demo this to you right now, but something to be aware of. And it will pair nicely with another improvement called templating. So you may be aware that when you start off a Cloudflow, you have a variety of triggers you can select from. I believe there is some degree of templating available, but with Power Automate Desktop, you are very much left with start the flow and get on with it. However, templates are going to come in, so that can reduce variability and raise the floor on quality. If you're starting with a template, you are starting with a well-structured flow. So for example, error handling, login and queue patterns already in place. Now, Microsoft have said that this is going to follow best practices anyway, so we should be safe in the knowledge that any templates you start with, you should be safe to continue on with and use. Microsoft have also documented that they plan to ship, as a start, templates for generic business process, try-catch scaffolds, work queue producer and consumer, and login frameworks. So if you're a desktop flow user, it's going to be an exciting end to the year for you. The enablement here is admins makers automatically. So this feature will just be rolled out by default for admins and makers when general availability hits. And you should see that come into play in the desktop app for Power Automate. Jumping into Copilot now, we have quite an interesting part of human in the loop process. So for those of you who aren't especially well versed on Copilot's human in the loop, this is the idea that you can have an agentic flow, contact a human to, I believe at present, it is mostly create an approval or start and wait for an approval, which is a case of a yes/no answer or an approve/deny answer from a human. What we now have in preview is request for information. This essentially lets an agent flow pause mid-execution, gather maker-defined inputs from a human, so a structured form, and then resume. Now, bearing in mind that autonomous flows can fail when inputs are missing, this should reduce failures, reduce handoffs, and restarts. Out of the box, the input types you can select are text, numbers, emails, binary switches, and more. The point being is that makers define the fields and validation so that the agent gets exactly what it needs to proceed safely. Now, unlike approvals, as I mentioned earlier, being a simple yes, no, approve, deny, you can request specific inputs and different data types, which can help expand on your processing. While the idea of asking for information and providing a free text box might sound like a messy recipe at first, it may actually be a welcome shout for you to know that you can standardize your inputs. So you can add placeholder text, you can restrict it to drop down options or multiple selection options, ensuring you get the info that you need. Now, that's all well and good, but what can you do with the data you return? You can build dynamic content from it. So in my screenshot there, I'm asking for a first name and a last name. If I had my flow perform the request for information, request a first name, the last name from someone, those two dynamic pieces of content would become parameters for me to use in the rest of my flow. So an example of how this would be useful, let's say you're an insurance business and you need one of your assessors to provide some information on a claim. You supply some initial information about the claim, requesting specific supporting information back from the assessor. So confirmed date, estimated claim allowance, and so on. Once completed, each one of those inputs can be used as a parameter, and you can retailor the flow based on the information you get back. So the enablement here is users automatically, meaning this should just become available for users without admin intervention when it reaches QA for supported environments. Now, the good news is public preview has been out, therefore I can preview. So if we jump into our demo here and we will, excuse me, open up Copilot Studio. Let's say that I wanted to create a new agentic flow. Design is going to pop open. We can have our, I mean, for the terms of this, imagine you've got a fantastic flow already in motion. So let's say that when an agent calls the flow, and we will say, just give me 2 seconds. Right, so we've got our agent info. Now what we want to do is request for information. So we're going to specify who we want to contact as part of this. So I believe we're logged in as Reginald at the moment. Let's say that we want to contact Reginald, and we'll have a request like, please confirm the claim date. We can pop in our agent info name that we've taken, and that will essentially be shown to the end user. Now, what we need to do for the person we're contacting is what we want to bring back. So next, we've got a Boolean yes, no, we've got an email field, we've got a number, we've got a date. So let's say that, and it's very similar to the normal Power Automate trigger inputs, the way this is structured. So let's say that I want a claim date field. Please enter a claim date as DDMM YYY. So we've given some information there as to what we want. Now we can make this optional. We can turn this into a multi-select list of options, obviously not applicable here, or a drop-down list of options. Now I think as well, let's say that we want to contact them to get some sort of approval level. So approval level as level 1, 2, or 3. If I can spell. Our 3 dots, we'll add a drop down. And now we can say which our options are. So level 1, level 2, or level 3. So when the human in the loop receives this, they will be asked to put in a claim date in the DDMMYYYY format, and they will be able to select either level 1, 2, or 3 as an approval level to send back. We now want to do something with that data, such as run a prompt or respond to the agent. I mean, probably a bad example, but we can use the parameters that we've collected to do that. So I think that should be a compose data operation. Lovely. We could say use our approval level as a claim date. Let's choose our claim date. And there we go. We've got both of our inputs there as dynamic parameters that we can reference and then play within the flow. Very handy. So I believe general availability for that comes into play October, so next month, something to look forward to. However, I believe you probably will likely have access to that as a preview item at the moment anyway. So moving into Power Pages now, we have the admin security agent. So you may have already seen a form of the security agent in your Power Apps Power Pages settings. So this basically monitors for potential vulnerabilities such as overly permissive rules, unused roles, or excessive access to sensitive data. What this can now, I believe as well, actually, it provides some sort of actionable recommendation as well to address any issues it raises. So there's some built-in validation and adherence to best practices. So the current security agent ensures your site remains somewhat protected from the start and continues to stay secure as it evolves. The new security and compliance agent, however, continually assesses your sites for operational threats and content risks. So this can raise alerts and enable automated responses. So you've basically got design time security and code scanning. So the admin trust, security and compliance agent Trust Shield, as Microsoft puts it, safeguards Power Pages websites by actively monitoring and mitigating security threats. Example here being phishing or DDoS attacks, which can be quite common. It also identifies and addresses content violations. So it can highlight spam, offensive or misleading material, and interestingly, trademark infringement. Now, on top of this, it can detect non-compliant configurations. So public site exposure, missing SSL certificates, privacy risks. Point being is that you can ensure a secure and compliant site operation. Now, you also get some actionable insights, automated policy-driven actions and alerts through the Power Platform Admin Center. Additionally, you can receive those via Teams and email, which bar the screenshots there you can see are already there. So in product notification, mail and Teams. And that can be selectively toggled as per the current security agent. These features will enable you to maintain secure and compliant sites with minimal effort, reduce risk, and enhance your oversight. What is interesting, though, is that Microsoft poised Power Pages as a secure and enterprise-ready platform. So this should make it particularly appealing to industries with strict compliance requirements. Still, the agent offers native, proactive security and governance features, with the end game being a reduced need for reliance on third-party tools. Another thing to look forward to if you're already using Power Pages. The enablement here is admins and makers automatically, so I would keep an eye out for this when it comes into public preview in March 2026. Like some of our items today, the general availability is to be confirmed, so keep an eye on the release plans Microsoft homepage to see when that comes about. Now, I can give you not a sneak peek of this because I'm not that lucky, but I can give you a little bit of information on the existing security agent. So if I pop into Power Pages, if you edit a website, so you can see here, I'm in the website editor, I can access my pages, my styling, my data. Under security, we now have the security agent, which we've had for a little while at the bottom. So you can turn on what the security agent is doing. At the moment, it can scan your site for vulnerabilities and monitor for traffic anomalies. You edit this, you can then configure how you're receiving. So you can be notified in the Power Platform Admin, you can be notified via email, via Teams, and you get a little overview of what the agent steps are doing. Now, when it comes to monitoring that in-app, if you go to the overview, you would have here, now if we were actively running scans, we would have some results here to actually show and display, but we do not. But you would essentially see here the actionable changes you need to make that the security agent has identified as some form of non-compliance. Now, If you do come in here and you do want to set up your agents, it is quite simple. You can just come down to the bottom, click Manage Agents, which will take you here, and you can monitor your security agent. So what we've got is nice at the moment, but it will be an exciting time for Power Pages people when the new admin and security compliance agent comes out. Now let's go back to our webinar. For those of you in Dataverse who have been using the prompt columns, you will be pleased to know you can reduce the amount of noise that these fields make by being able to conditionally set the records this is actually set on. So for those of you who aren't familiar with prompt columns, these use the Copilot AI and GPTs as a model. Essentially, this type of field allows you to create a prompt and have Copilot use it as a guide for filling in data in this field. Example uses being use this field to keep a case summary that can be used customer facing using a friendly tone. You can then, providing you're happy with the content that's output, expose that if you've got a Power Apps portal or Power Pages site and you've got your friendly Copilot summary ready for the customer to read the case. Now that's great. That's fine, but maybe there are some times when, some cases where you want to expose that field, but you don't necessarily want it populated unless certain actions have been taken. This is where this conditionality comes in. So essentially, while the details as of yet are vague, the conditionality should let you decide which records get that prompt. Let's say, for example, only for cases where the account is in London, or only when the case priority is high. Now, cases is being used as an example here, but you can create a prompt field on any table. This then helps you control AI behavior with a bit more precision and reduce the noise on the records where you don't need data in this field. Now, makers can define the condition, new records meeting it populate it automatically. I believe existing records should populate or should be fillable, backfillable via a batch job. But Microsoft is noting that the final design may vary. So always check the live plan page for the latest dates. You should be able to find that on this release wave documentation, and I believe we should have a link to that at the end of this webinar. So you can see public preview up there comes in next month, and then general availability is to be confirmed. So if you go into the Power Apps Maker portal and you do want to start playing with this, it is quite simple to access the current field type. So let's just sign back in again. Lovely. So ideally you do this solutionized, but for the sake of this demo, we've gone into a table, we've gone to account, and we'll load up a new column. Under the data type, you can select prompt. Now, again, the prompt itself is still preview, and the conditionality isn't there yet, but for the sake of showing you what a prompt field is, you configure your prompt. So you can say here, we've got a sample instruction for what we'd like to see. So classifying the account ID into one of these categories, politics, business, sport, entertainment, and so on, by analyzing the key themes in context. Now, you have got so much more content than just surfacing the account ID. I believe you can surface practically any field on here, which make life nice and easy. And you can basically build out what you want to see in this field. So as an example, let's just give this a test. I'm assuming this will say business as a sample. It's obviously not got real data to work with here because there's no sample record. Yeah, business. And then the knowledge use will tell you the data it's sort of trawled through. So a nice idea for a field anyway. Even better when you can specify the types of records or the filtering for the records you actually want to see it populated on. Back to the webinar. And then I believe lastly is the Copilot Studio IP firewall. So for those of you who use managed environments, you will probably be aware of the IP firewalls that you can introduce at the moment. Now, on top of this, we now have the ability to reduce access to the Copilot Studio via IP address. So the IP firewall will evaluate each request to Copilot Studio or one of the agents in real time. If the request originates outside of your allowed IP ranges, it gets blocked. So that mitigates the data exfiltration and token replay risks. Your environments must be managed environments, which you can configure via the admin center. So for your managed environments, I would recommend starting with an audit-only mode. The idea here being is it will audit the IPs that access and what's sort of outside your ranges before actually implementing this. Or you could, potentially stop people being access a resource. Stop people accessing a resource they need. It's probably also worth communicating any VPN or Office IP prerequisites to makers, and maybe documenting some form of exception process like a temporary IP allow list. Not the most exciting end to the webinar, but with more businesses relying on their Copilot agents, I imagine having the extra security in place to restrict IP addresses is probably welcome news to many. Now, the enablement here is admins and makers automatically, providing a managed environment, as I mentioned. So again, keep an eye out for this in your security compliance for this feature soon. So you can see the preview there is July 2025, with general availability coming into effect October 2025. I navigate back to our site here and go to our compliance tab and sign in once again. If you navigate to your Power Platform Admin Center, go to Security, and under Security, Identity and Access, you have access to your IP firewall. You can then choose the environments that are managed, so our consultant one or our core one, and you can essentially set up your IP firewall there, setting the ranges you don't want access for, setting the ranges you do want access for, I should say, and blocking the rest. So again, nice little bit of compliance there to end with. I'll hand you back to Johannes now. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, James. Really insightful, hopefully for everyone. So that concludes today's session. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Obviously, keep an eye on your inboxes over the next couple of days, where we'll share you a link to today's recording. A couple of asks from my side. So we've got a event coming up. Obviously, as you might have heard from our marketing team, but we've been quite busy over the last couple of weeks, and the big one for us obviously is on the 19th of November. Our spotlight on Dynamics Data and Copilot should be a very interesting event. So if you've heard, please do join us or tell your colleagues. And then the final ask from me is, obviously, if you're aware of anyone in the sector, in the profit sector, that might be interested in having a conversation about moving to Microsoft Dynamics or Business Central, or just want to have a chat about how we can help further their opportunities and the impact of their mission, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you again for joining us. Obviously, if there's any questions, feel free to email us directly. And have a wonderful weekend when it finally arrives.